Ever wonder what makes those country rock solos so irresistible? Whether it's the twangy bends or the fancy picking, it all starts with the right notes. So today we'll cover the essential scales of country rock, showing you how to master them and elevate your play. By the end of the video, you'll have the tools to play a solo that would make James Burton or Dickie Betts proud. So stick around. Whether it was through the Eagles, Little Feat, the Rolling Stones, or the father of country rock himself, Graham Parsons, chances are you're familiar with country rock or its blood brother, Southern rock. You can hear its influence in the band, Rod Stewart, CCR, and of course Southern rock bands like the Allman Brothers, Leonard Skinner, and the Outlaws. But I'll bet you're not here for that. You're here because country rock guitar sounds great, but it doesn't quite work the same way as your standard Led Zeppelin lead, so let's check it out. And make sure you stay to the end because I apply it to a Rolling Stones-ish style honky-tonk progression. It all starts with the G run. So the G chord, not the E chord, but the G chord shape is the shape that we're going to use to structure our scales around. But we don't want to be stuck in just the open position, so let's take it up the neck. Let's do this in the key of D because our example is going to be in the key of D. If I take that G chord shape and I move it up until I get a D, and that happens on the 10th fret right here, that 10th fret right there, that's a D, I get a chord that's like this. Now I'm not suggesting you play this, but this is the framework that we're going to use. And the scale that we're going to build around there, the primary scale that we're going to think of is the D major pentatonic. And you can see, here's the D, and there's also a D up here. And it sounds like this. And it looks like this. Now, some of you may be familiar with this as the B minor pentatonic, and in fact it is the same notes, but we're going to be thinking about it as a D major because it's coming out of this chord. So that's the main scale that we're going to use as a framework, and it's great for country rock, giving you sounds like this. And that's great, but while the major pentatonic is a great framework, it won't give you that country blues sort of flavor. If we add a couple of choice notes, we'll get a lot closer. Let's start with the D major pentatonic, shown here, and now let's add the minor third to the scale. Now, if you're into naming scales, you might call this the bluegrass pentatonic. You'll note that it's the same as the B blues scale, but again, this is a different mindset. We're thinking of this as a scale in D. So here's what the scale sounds like. And here's something that you could do with it, an example. That bluegrass pentatonic is great, but there are a couple more notes that we'll want to add, especially to get the sweeter sounds of Southern rock. Again, we'll start with the D major pentatonic shown here. Now we'll add a flatted 7th, which is a C. That gives us a little bit of a bluesy feel. And we'll add the 4th, which is a G. Now that gives us that sweet Allman Brothers sort of sound. And that scale sounds like this. And over a progression like this. Might play a lick like this. Now, if you're theory-minded, you already know the name of that scale. But if not, congratulations, you just learned the D mixolydian. Great, but before we move on to the example, let's put it all together. Here's the whole enchilada, a little daunting for sure, so I don't recommend memorizing this pattern. Instead, I recommend thinking of the D major pentatonic as the framework. Note the G-shaped D chord embedded in there. And then we're going to add the other notes in there for flavor when you want to play a run or a lick. Okay, now let's put it all together into an example in the style of the Rolling Stones I call faded pedals. I think you understand why. I'm going to play two choruses. The first chorus through, I'm just going to emphasize the notes of the scales that we learned. The second time through, I'll make it more into a real country rock solo. Okay, so the chords here are D, A, G, and D. So we're going to use the D major pentatonic as our bass scale, right? So the first time through, it's something like... This idea right here is very common. We're using that blue note, if you will, the happy blue note, and we used it on the intro too. That's kind of our G run, but here we're playing it in D. Then I think we played something like... Here I'm using that G. And then finally... And that's the first time through that we went through. So we used a little bit of this pentatonic that we did with the added minor third, and then we used a little bit of the Mixolydian, particularly this G note right here. All right, the second time through, we pulled the stops out a little bit more, and we played a solo that outlined the chords just a little bit, used some of the typical bends. It goes something like this. You can see I'm still using that D major pentatonic framework, but here I'm pulling up on the G string 9th and holding the B string 10th. And what I'm really doing is I'm bending to a D chord. You can hear that. This is a little tricky because what I'm doing is I'm doing what's called a pre-bend. I'm actually bending the string before I play it and then releasing it. That's a very common thing in country. Next line travels up the neck a bit to get to this little D chord. And then I travel up here to get to the A. See how that's a little A? And then I do a little bit of a, just a little rhythmic thing right there. And then finally, and end up on the D. But no choice is just one aspect of country guitar. If you really want to take it to the next level, click here, because I show you a particular lick by a master of this style that really changed rock guitar, and you can make it your own too. So click here. I'll see you in the next video, and I'll see you on down the road.